Okay, slideshow. Greetings, students. Welcome to yet another in a series of video lectures from Social Work with Individuals and Families. Today, we're going to spend a little bit of time in Chapter 17, talking about additive empathy, interpretation, and the use of confrontation. As always, we encourage you to do your readings before you come to class and be prepared to engage in the lesson. All right, so when we talk about additive empathy and interpretation, we're really looking at these as valuable skills that you will utilize in terms of working with your client, especially after some time has elapsed and you've developed a decent working relationship with them. When we think about this additive empathy, it's really about exploring the deeper feelings in some of the things that clients might be sharing or saying to you. It's also about underlying what those meanings of those feelings and thoughts and behaviors are, how they all connect, as well as it will help you understand a little bit more about some of the hidden purposes of behavior, strengths unrealized, as well as potentialities. So from my practice days, I can remember often working in case management with families that were in need of child protective services. And so one of the questions that I would often get very on in the relationship would be from the parents. And the first thing that they would say, oftentimes quite curt, is, do you have kids? And so what I learned over the years is when I think about interpreting what feelings might be behind those or using additive empathy, is that there's a fear that that particular client believes that I may not be able to help them, because if I don't have children, for example, then what's my basis for the help that I can potentially give to them as they're struggling with their own children? So it's about looking between the lines, or really trying to understand what your client might be feeling, which is the motivator a lot of times for some of the ways that they respond or some of the ways that they behave. So it's really about flushing that out and really exploring that with your clients as you move forward. So really keeping those kind of things in mind as you're working with your clients. Again, using it sparingly, because we want to make sure that so additive empathy, for example, wouldn't be something that I would utilize that particular technique in my initial interview, because I don't know that particular client. That client doesn't know me. They're not comfortable. We haven't established a solid working relationship. Trust may be an issue at this particular point. So as time goes on, as we continue to meet, as we continue to become familiar with each other, then I might be in a better position to start to employ some of the additive empathy. And some of the reasons here are listed in terms of when and when maybe not to do that. Paying attention to your client's interpretation or reaction to your interpretation. Sometimes when you hear information and you give it back to your clients in a paraphrase and try to assign a feeling to it, sometimes you hit it on the head, which means that, you know, it helps in terms of the relationship that you're establishing as it relates to the engagement, but also it helps them understand that you're listening and you're actively concerned about what they are actually saying, what they're sharing with you. So think about these things and making sure that as you're doing those interviews that, you know, you're not doing these several responses in succession, making sure that you're taking your cues from the client in terms of what's too much and what's not enough. And so, and also not to utilize these when clients are already under a lot of stress and strain. Keep in mind that, you know, they're getting to know us, they're trying to establish a relationship, and we have to be very careful and very thoughtful and mindful about where they may be at any given point in time. So thinking about the use of the additive empathy and interpretation. Confrontation. And this was a tough one, because I think a lot of times folks will believe that, you know, social workers are wonderful, nice, and pleasant and easy to get along with folks, and we usually are. But there are times when we need to, in our professional capacity, be able to confront clients about things that they're involved in or the behaviors that they're involved in. Typically, this happens after a relationship is established. There may be times or instances where you might need to do this early on in the relationship, depending on the severity of the behavior and what folks are involved in, that could be problematic. So when you look at the list here and the items highlighted, here on the screen, we were looking at violation or imminent danger to self or others, looking at where you are in that relationship, but also making sure. So an example might be that if I've got a client that's meeting with me today, say at 5 o'clock, and they come to the office, I have the distinct smell of alcohol, their eyes are bloodshot, they're slurring their words, and they're staggering as they're coming in, and I realize that they drove here. And so, you know, based on where that person is, I may decide not to go through with the interview. Probably would likely do that given the fact that they're under the influence or appears to be. But I'm also concerned, and I might have to have a conversation with them about drinking and driving. So if you're going to go be driving home, that's going to be a problem. I'm a social worker, and so I need to be thinking about, are there some alternatives for you getting home? Because I don't want you to be in a situation where you put yourself in imminent danger or you put someone else in imminent danger, as well as you break the law. So that might be an appropriate time to use some confrontation with a client. Using it sparingly, doing it out of concern and warmth, it's effective. It becomes more effective in terms of establishing that working relationship as time goes on. So keeping that in mind. Again, not when people are under emotional stress and strain. Sometimes people will share things with you when they're in the midst of really, really struggling with some hard life choices or some difficult things that may have happened within the context of their family or in their lives. And so playing it by ear, you know, I want to pile on to the things that might be already happening for you, but also don't expect that clients are going to change after maybe 1 or 2 confrontations. Sometimes you may have to continue to revisit this over the course of your working relationship. Remembering that clients didn't wake up in the place that they are. Things happened to them. There were processes that were involved that they evolved to this particular place. So it won't be a quick fix in a lot of instances. I think there are also some indications for when to use assertive confrontation as well. So when we've got cognitive and perceptual discrepancies, when there are affective discrepancies, when there are behavioral discrepancies. So, you know, if I've got a client who is, let's say, having some difficulty around, I'll give you a story. So I had a client at one particular point while I worked on the crisis line who would call on a fairly regular basis. And what would happen was this client was suffering with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and she had this irrational need to continue to wash her hands. So as we would start the crisis conversation about what was going on, why she called in today, she would deviate to like, I need to wash my hands. Is it okay to use this particular soap? And so after having worked with her for a while, what I would recognize is that this is where she was in terms of where she was functioning in that particular day. So I would often shift the conversation to, have you taken your medication today? The medications that are going to help you with your symptoms. So being more assertive in terms of not necessarily challenging her about the need to wash the hands, but helping her understand that the compulsive need to wash her hands could probably be lessened if she were to take her medications as her psychiatrist had to prescribe. So thinking about those kind of things are going to be very helpful for you as well. Also understanding the stages of change. Recognizing that oftentimes when clients come to you, sometimes they come of their own volition, sometimes they're sent by others or compelled by members of family or agencies or the courts. So they often will not believe or don't see that they actually have an issue. And so as you can see here, your task as a social worker really needs to be to raise some awareness for folks. A lot of times people who, I've worked with clients who've had issues with chemical use. And when we talk, they would say that they don't have an issue. And so we would have some other conversation around how the behavior was affecting other people in the family and whether that was problematic. Or if you find yourself going to court and being locked up, is that problematic for you? So to really help them understand that there's a connection between the places that they find themselves and the behavior that they involve themselves that may have actually precipitated that. So that will be your job in terms of that. The contemplation stage, which is really where there is some awareness, but maybe the client hasn't moved. So again, it's about exploring the reasons for change and the possibilities for change. What are the good things that could happen from this as we move through it? And then preparation. the phase where the client finally comes to grip with, yes, there's some things going on. Yes, there's some things that I need to do, and I'm at a place where I want to do them. And so now it's about really just kind of moving forward with the appropriate planning for what needs to happen. Coming up with a plan with the client, looking at their strengths, and putting together a plan that's reasonable, that works in the scale of their day. One of the things that I often share with my newer social workers who are putting together treatment plans for clients is that when you look at your plan that you plan together with this client, would you be able to do these things in the course of the time frame that's been allotted here? And so really to think about clients have lives, clients have responsibilities and other things. And so to be mindful of those things as we're putting the plan together so that we're not overwhelming people inadvertently. Then maintaining basically is really looking at, are we on track? Are things working the way that they need to? Do we need to readjust? Anticipating that there might be times where people will do really well, but then have a relapse or fall back into some of the old behavior. But it's about acknowledging that sometimes failing is a part of succeeding and working with your clients from that particular viewpoint. So that pretty much sums up my portion of the lecture. So as always, again, do your reading before you come to class, and good luck, and we'll talk to you soon.